My parents always favored my golden child brother and disowned me for starting a business. Now my company is successful, my brother lost his job, and my parents want me to hire him. Hey everyone. Before we dive in, I have a quick favor to ask. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and ensures you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. I-29M was recently contacted by my parents, who have not been in touch with me for the past 5 years. They reached out because they wanted me to help them out, or more precisely, they wanted me to help my brother. My brother Craig, 31M, has always been the golden child, so to speak. My parents never even bothered to hide it. He happened to be better than me in every aspect back then, especially academically, something my parents constantly reminded me of. They kept telling me that he was doing so much better in school and that I needed to buckle up if I wanted to be in the same league as him. Craig got into a great college, and 5 years ago, he became the youngest vice president in his company's history. He had been working there ever since he graduated and had been earning well from the very beginning. When he made history at his company, his fancy corporate job became the new standard for me to live up to, and my parents couldn't stop rubbing it in my face. Honestly, though, I had no interest in being a 9-to-5 employee. I'm sure that life has its perks, but I wanted to be an entrepreneur. That had been my goal ever since I even learned the meaning of the word. 5 years ago, after working at several places and gaining industry knowledge, I decided to start my own business. Modern and edgy car accessories that I would design myself. I had spent enough time on research and development and had a proper business model, so I thought I'd speak to my parents about it first. Regardless of how they always favored my brother, I believed they would still want the best for me because, well, they were my parents. 2 days after the party they threw for my brother to celebrate his new job, I approached them in person and told them about my plan. I expected them to give some sort of feedback, but instead, they just started laughing. They thought I was joking and said it was embarrassing that, after so many years of education, this was my big idea for the future. I told them I was serious, but they advised me not to quit my job, saying they'd be embarrassed to introduce their son as a failure. They told me that my business was doomed, that I wasn't capable enough, and compared to my brother, I should just stick to the job I had. I was really offended. I argued with them and told them I would go ahead with the business, with or without their support. They said I was free to do whatever I wanted but not free of the consequences. They told me if I went through with it, they would cut me out of their lives. They were tired of introducing their sons as the VP at a prestigious company and the one still trying to figure his life out at 25. They said they had been thinking about cutting me off for a while anyway. They gave me a choice: keep my job and not embarrass them, or go ahead with my business and lose them. I think it's obvious what I did. I chose to cut them out. I never spoke to them again, and I haven't been in touch with Craig either. He obviously took their side, and I was fine with that. He was too arrogant anyway, so I didn't want anything to do with him from the beginning. I had been working with cars for a long time, and that's where I got my business idea from, so I had faith in it. I quit my job and worked towards my goal. It was risky. I won't say it with pride because I genuinely wouldn't recommend that route to anyone, but it worked out. Within a few months, I had some investors on board and launched my business. It was rough at first. I lived hand-to-mouth and relied solely on word-of-mouth marketing. Slowly, I got more customers, and after about a year and a half, things picked up. There was no looking back after that. Now, I'm pretty comfortable. I have my own apartment in a great neighborhood, a nice car, and everything I dreamed of. I'm not a millionaire, but I'm doing well enough for myself, and I'm definitely not a failure as my parents predicted. I proved them wrong, and I'm proud of that. I'm so happy that I don't even feel the need to have their validation anymore. It's not worth it. Over the past 5 years, I haven't been in touch with them. I even got married to my girlfriend of 8 years, and we've been married for 2 years now. Last month, we found out she's pregnant. I've hit so many milestones, but I've never contacted my parents. They know where I live and could easily find me through relatives, but they never tried. I've stayed in touch with the rest of the family, and I know they ask about me, but never directly reach out. Last week, they finally contacted me and asked if I'd be willing to meet them. I discussed it with my wife, and she encouraged me to go see what it was about. They hadn't mentioned anything in the message, so I didn't know what to expect. When I visited them, they welcomed me warmly, but I sensed something was going on. They had never been this nice to me, even when I lived with them. Eventually, they told me they'd heard about how well my business was doing and wanted to congratulate me. They didn't apologize, but said they were glad I proved them wrong, and their skepticism was gone. That was nice, and I just smiled. Then they told me about Craig. Apparently his company hadn't been doing well, and there were mass layoffs, even in upper management. He had been laid off 4 months ago and had been sitting at home ever since, depressed and unsure of what to do. I thought it was strange they were telling me all this, but I let them talk. Eventually, they asked if I'd be willing to hire Craig. They said he needed something that paid well and allowed him to bring his expertise to the table. I didn't know how to respond, so I told them I needed time to think and would get back to them later. I didn't say yes on purpose because I didn't know how I felt about it. I should have known they weren't reaching out just to reconnect. They had plenty of opportunities before, but never did. They seemed pleased with themselves, like they expected me to say yes. After discussing it with my wife, I decided to decline. My wife works in a bank and isn't involved in my company, but she told me this was my professional space, and whatever I decided goes. She didn't want to meddle, but said if I didn't think I could work with my brother, then that was enough reason. She didn't believe my parents were being genuine and felt I didn't owe them anything, especially since I'd already offered to meet them. I didn't plan on telling them directly, thinking they'd use it to paint me as the bad guy, but they kept texting me daily, asking for an answer. I ignored them until they finally called me 2 days ago. They told me I had to give them an answer. So, I told them I'd thought it through and concluded that I couldn't work well with Craig. We never had a good relationship, and I didn't feel I owed him, or them, a job. They completely flipped out. They screamed at me about everything they'd done for me, raising me, paying for everything when I was a kid, and now I was turning my back on them. They said I was pretending I didn't owe them anything. I thought that was unfair. They supported me as a child because I was a child. It would be illegal not to. And besides, that wasn't even the point. I told them I just wouldn't work well with Craig, and that's why I didn't want him in my company. I reminded them we hadn't been in touch for 5 years, that they'd told me they had no faith in me and hadn't invested in my business, so they had no right to expect anything from me now. They kept yelling and said they thought 5 years was long enough for me to have let go of past grudges. They said I was being petty and refusing to help family, that Craig was my brother and I needed to be there for him, and that he would have done the same for me. They even said they would have supported me if my business had failed, so I owed it to them now. It got really confusing and heated, so I told them I didn't want to talk anymore and hung up. Then I blocked their numbers. Since then, I've been feeling confused because of the things they said, especially about how they would have helped me if I were in Craig's place. I talked to my wife, and she says they only said those things because I wasn't in his place and they're trying to manipulate me. She reminded me they haven't even apologized and still expect me to help them. My brother was never kind to me when we were kids. Everyone picked on me, and he joined in. I know she's right, but I still have this nagging feeling of guilt. I just feel really weird about everything. Update 1. Thank you so much for responding to my post. It has been a few days since I spoke to my parents last, and I know what I did was not such a big deal. Honestly, it's not like my brother will never get a job again. It's just that I don't personally want to work with him. I mentioned that I had spoken to my wife, and the two of us have decided to stick to our decision. But that's not sitting well with my parents. They've been going around telling people that I'm jealous of my brother and had always been, which is why I'm relishing the opportunity to do this to my family. I don't even understand why they're taking this so hard. Since I know that they have been texting every single relative that we have about this, it's not even like these relatives are talking to them and they're just bringing it up. They're literally going out of their way to text them and tell them about me. It's just ridiculous the way they are acting, and I think it's a plea for attention, but I'm not going to give it to them. They have been blocked, and no matter what they do, I'm not unblocking them or speaking to them about this. Some of the relatives who have bothered to reach out to me and sent me the screenshots, I have responded to them and explained the entire situation. It's not like they didn't know, because for the past 5 years, my parents and I run into each other at family events and don't speak to each other. So most people were aware of our strained relationship, but this is taking things way too far, trying to directly involve them and make me look like the bad guy. Anyway, after I clarified things with some of my relatives, most of them told me that I did not need to worry about my parents. They were not going to turn against me since they were aware of whatever had happened in the past, and they know that my parents are just overreacting right now. So that's what I'm feeling good about right now. Honestly, my wife is pregnant, so I don't think I have time to worry about these things at the moment. I've been thinking about making the announcement in a couple of weeks, but I think I'm going to do it earlier just so my parents can take the hint and stop trying to bother me. I think it's a good idea, although we're not sure if it's going to work or not since my parents are pretty heartless, and they can even go and try to trouble us in spite of knowing that my wife is pregnant. I wouldn't put it past them, that's for sure. Update 2. Hello. So my wife and I made the pregnancy announcement on social media a couple of days ago. It's been about 10 days since my last conversation with my parents. Most of my family reached out to me to congratulate me, but then I received an email from an unknown sender that said that my child was going to suffer because of what I was doing to my family. I immediately knew that this was my parents. It had to be, because nobody else would even dream of saying something so horrendous. My baby is not even born yet, and they are already wishing ill upon us just because I said no to helping my brother out. It's not even like Craig had directly approached me for help, in which case I would have at least considered things. But it's my parents who want me to give him a job. Anyway, that's beside the point. Even if I had done some really evil things, I don't think it would have given them the license to say such things. I did not tell my wife about that email because it would just upset her, and I don't want that to happen. She's in the really early stages of her pregnancy. Nevertheless, it's still very disappointing to read things like these. I chose to deal with this on my own, and I went over to my parents' house to speak to them in person. I did not want to unblock them, so visiting them was the only way to speak to them, but they refused to even open up the door to let me in. Probably because they were aware that what they had done was really wrong. So I just spoke to them from outside their house, and I really lost my temper there. I yelled at them and said that they had no right to say such things, especially after the way they had behaved with me my entire childhood and the way they had been treating me for the past 5 years, like I was not even part of the family. Just because I was moderately successful, now they wanted a piece of it and wanted to share my success with my brother as well, even though they had never forced Craig to do such things when I was struggling. To be honest, they had not even been there for me when I was struggling, so they did not deserve to even speak to me at this point. I told them that whatever they were trying to do was not working because it was just alienating me from them even more. I also said that I never wanted to speak to them again, and even if they apologized, I was not going to forgive them in the future. So they could say goodbye to any help from me when they retired. And they will never get to see their grandchild either. After saying that, I left and came back home, and I feel really relieved now. To be honest, I had been holding these things back for quite some time ever since they started bothering me, but now it was high time that I gave them a befitting response. I have not told my wife about this interaction yet because I don't want to upset her, and I don't think that I will until the pregnancy is done with. Update 3. Hi, so after I spoke to my parents last week in person, they decided to lay low for a while and not do anything. I also hosted a pregnancy announcement party at my house for some family members and close friends, and I had expected them to do something on that day, but they did not bother. So I thought that maybe they had finally moved on from this whole episode, and I was trying to do the same thing. But then this morning, I received a call from Craig while I was at work. That was really strange because he totally stopped speaking to us 5 years back, and I had no idea what he wanted to speak to me about. For a second, I thought he might try to talk to me along the same lines as my parents and demand that I give him a job, and I would have to go through the entire ordeal again. So I ignored his first call, but then he called me a few more times and even messaged me saying that it was urgent and he needed to speak to me. He told me that I did not need to worry because he was not going to ask anything of me. He said that he just wanted to discuss something that had been bothering him for some time, so I decided to answer the call, and we spoke today. He said that he had been pretty depressed for the past few weeks, so he had not been speaking to anybody and had been ignoring all the messages and emails that he had been receiving, including the ones from his relatives. It was only a couple of days ago that he had finally checked those messages and realized that everybody was talking about how it was unfair for our parents to be demanding that I give him a job in my company, especially when they had never treated me well. Craig was really confused because he had been talking to our parents constantly for the past couple of weeks, but they had not said anything about such things going on in the family. He had spoken to our parents after he read those messages and asked them if they had done something of the sort, and they had outright declined it and said that they did not know what was being referred to in those messages. But he felt like they were lying to him, so he had called me instead to find out the truth. He had confided in our parents about his job situation and how upset he was. He had never even once said that he wanted my help, so he could not understand why they had chosen to enlist me and then try to force me to contact him and give him a job when he himself had not asked for it. After giving it some thought, I decided to tell him the truth because I thought that he deserved to know exactly what our parents had been up to behind his back. I told him the entire story of whatever my parents had told me and said that after they had shared his story with me, they had told me that I needed to give him a job and help my family out because he was not in a good place right now and they did not want him to suffer. I told him that maybe their initial intention was to genuinely help him and support him to get his life back on track, but eventually it just turned into harassing me, and I was not fine with that. I told Craig that I was really sorry about his job because I knew that it meant everything to him, and he had put in a lot of work at the company in his position, and it could not have been easy to be laid off like that. But honestly, he also knew that we never got along and would not work well together, which is why I declined my parents' request. Craig seemed to understand. He told me that he was not interested in working with me. He did not mean it offensively, but he was just not in the right state right now to be working with anybody, and he was just taking a break on purpose. My parents had made it out like he had no offers that were worth considering, but he actually did, and he was just holding out on them because he wanted to take a break. That was his personal choice. It was not that he was not upset, but his decision to not work for a while was not influenced by that. He seemed pretty frustrated, so he vented to me for a bit, and I let him, because even though we were not on the best of terms anymore, I thought that he could do it anyway. After having a full conversation about this, he told me that he was very upset about what our parents had done regarding him because it made him seem desperate and gave people the wrong idea about him. Like he was trying to convince my parents to force me to get him a job, and it was just really confusing because he had not done anything of the sort. So he told me that he was going to speak to our parents about this, and he apologized to me for all that I had gone through. I thought it was really mature of him, and I really felt like he had grown up a lot in the past 5 years, especially after he got laid off from his job. I guess he got the idea that nothing was permanent, and so he should not be so proud and arrogant. Maybe that was a lesson in disguise. But anyway, we were not exactly able to patch things up, but at least we had a good talk. and I think that's enough for me. Update 4. So a couple of days ago, Craig and I spoke to each other on the phone, and after our discussion, he said that he was going to speak to our parents and confront them about what they had done. So he did that, and it did not go too well, because my parents got all defensive and said that they were just trying to help him out because they did not think that his position to take some time for himself was a good one, and he needed to get back into looking for a better job immediately. They ended up in a huge fight about it because Craig accused them of trying to control his life right from the beginning and never letting him make any decisions of his own, even when he was grown up. My parents obviously did not like that and started counting all the things that they had done for him, which were just normal things that parents usually do for their kids. I don't know why they always feel that it's right to brag about it as if they did it as a favor. It was not a favor, you had to do it. Anyway, they got into a really bad fight, and now Craig is no longer speaking to them. And guess who they are blaming for all of that? Yep, you got it. They are blaming me for it all once again. I just don't understand how I can become the scapegoat for literally every situation that they are in. This time, there were no personal confrontations, and they just decided to go ahead and make a Facebook post about it. Lucky for me, though, all our relatives came to my rescue immediately and called my parents out on their BS. They reminded them that they had been terrible parents, not just to me, but also to Craig in a way, because they kept trying to control him and put him under pressure, especially when he was going through such a difficult time. They should have been there for him morally and emotionally, supported him, but instead they were trying to put him down even more and make him seem like the bad guy. So after they received a lot of comments from our relatives, they decided to delete that post and block everybody from my family. To sum it up, pretty much everyone has ostracized them, and I'm really happy about it. Craig and I, well, he has apologized to me for treating me badly in the past, and we are going to try and build our relationship in the future. But right now, the most important thing in my life is my wife, and I'm really excited to be a father.